the gifts of sponsors in order to maintain learning in this show. Gail and Leslie, Year of Learning. Gail and Leslie Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Moshe Shprinza, Bas Yosef Chaim Vachava, Kanan ben Yosef Eliezer Vachana, Pesha Bas Shmuel Yitzchak Levi Vitzpeira, and Iser ben Yoel Moshe Cohen Vachana. Rexford Friends of Gladys Sherman, Gutta Bas Meir, Michael Klein and Friends of Judah Klein, Yehuda Tzvi ben Chaim, Marcia Brunner in memory of her husband, the Rav Rachmiel ben Shmuel, friends and family of Arthur Ritholtz, Mordechai Yudel ben Baruch Lev Cohen, friends and family of Siggy Bessler, Shalom Shraga ben Dov, friends of Marvin Weinstein, Mordechai Oizer ben Yisrael Aaron, friends of Sarah Alpert in memory of her husband, the Rav Tzvi Lipa ben Hillel, Rexford Friends of Maddie Sherman. No, I'm sorry. Where did I get Sherman from? Maddie Friedman, and that's Mandel Miriam Bas Kalman Ruvain. Bella and David Adler in memory of her father, Eliyahu ben Yosef Cohen. Friends of Honey Shafetz, Hakana Shoshana ben Yosef. Friends of Jack Prince, Yaakov Yitzchak ben Shmuel Dov. Friends of Sandy Davidoff, Shulamis Bas Chaim Eliyahu. Friends of Judah Cohen, Yehudis Liba Bas Moshe. And friends of Dr. Annette Safransky, Chana Bas Ephraim Fischel. We have a month of learning. Mel and Haran Haller in memory of his brother, Yaakov ben Avraham. Jill and Perry Meltzer in memory of her mother, Baila Bas Avram, and his father, Duvid ben Fischel Halevi. Sid Perez and Nuwan in memory of his wife, Sarah Tova Bas Yisrael Dov. And Jack Gilman in memory of his mother, Elka Bas Yeshayahu. A week of learning. Friends of Cheryl and David Wisowski in memory of Gershon Greenblatt, brother of Cheryl and son of Myra and Ben Greenblatt, who were longtime members of Torah Or. There are no days of learning today, but we'll give a call out. Tomorrow is Marty Engel's 80th birthday. Well, he's not here. What do you want from me? I'll say it again. I'll tell him he has to pay for a kiddush tomorrow. All right. We are still in, we are on Lamed Aleph Amid Aleph, the last word of the first line. So basically the second line. Is Marty Engel coming?
I think so. It's just a little bit delayed.
All right. It's only 25 after, so I'll wait for him. What?
Taking off the film. They can't get here.
Okay, you should leave them on. No, there's no reason to take them off. You're learning after davening. It's a mitzvah to wear tefillin all day. You should leave them on.
The other part is you got to have them on, your mind the whole time you're wearing it.
You have to not be frivolous. You don't have to have it foremost in your mind, because if you're learning the learning, you have to be aware that they're on, and you don't say nibble pet and stuff like that. And you don't insult Teddy. Is he here?
Not yet.
I guess that 80-year-old takes longer to wrap the Ritzuah.
Well, you really wouldn't know yet. Maybe.
Me? I'm past 80.
Oh, no.
Well, no, I'm... and it feels like it, too. No, when I hit about 70, the warranty started parts started expiring.
Every year you start out, the family A6 note, it's more and more meaning.
Yeah, well, the worst part of it is that every single Shabbos they move the shul further from my apartment.
You gotta get one of these scooters.
I'm working on a walker that I can't quite bring myself to buy a walker, but I am walking here with a cane on Shabbos.
I had a broken ankle, I went through all of that. Came with the first with the wheelchair.
I hear. I knew Marty. He's got to be doing more than wrapping up his tefillin.
I know he is. Last night at both boys, I had both sons came up. Maybe. Okay.
All right, we're gonna start in one more minute when it's 8:30, with or without him.
Here he comes.
All right, you just made it, Marty. I said if you're not here by 8:30, I'm starting without you. All right, so I will reiterate that, well, though there are no individual days of learning, we commemorate the fact that Marty is paying for a kiddush tomorrow because it's his 80th birthday tomorrow. Is that on the Jewish calendar?
My Jewish calendar is Zion of.
Okay, so that means you have to make two kiddushes because technically Jews don't celebrate secular birthdays; they celebrate Jewish birthdays. But because I got to read this because it's $25 for a day, and he must have collected pennies from everybody because Judy and Marty Engel and their children and grandchildren all pitched in to come up with $25. All right, Ad Khan, top of Lamed Aleph Amid Aleph, a very interesting case. Reuven is squatting on a piece of property, and Shimon comes along, says that's my property, and they wind up in court. So it's an extremely interesting case. Ze Omer Shalavoisai. The guy who's there on the land says, this is I inherited this land from my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather. Vize Omer Shalavosai. The other one says, what are you talking about? I inherited that property from my forebears. I say Sahade da Avosai. Hey, one of them, the person who is not occupying the property, actually brings witnesses that property has been in his family for decades, and that his father, his grandfather before him owned their property. And the guy on the property brings witnesses that he has a chazaka, he's been there for 3 years. Okay? So how would you rule? So Rabba says, my lila shaker. Why would the occupant lie? This is really a technical term that means he has amigo. He says, I've been here for 3 years, but he could have said, I bought it from your father or your grandfather. So the other guy isn't upslugged. He proves that it was in his family, but he did not say, I bought it from your father. So a boy, Omala, he could have said, Minach Zivanta, I bought it from your father. So because he has that miga, and v'achalti ha'shnei chazaka, and in addition, I've been here for 3 years or more. So therefore, Rava was inclined to give it to the current occupant. But Abaya pointed out that once there are witnesses, you can't make a migo kind of claim. Omerle Abaya, Mali l'shaker b'makam edim lo amrinan. We do not say he could have brought a stronger claim when he brought witnesses to his main claim that I am an occupant. So on that basis, and Abaya was Rava's Talmud, and Rava did not rule in favor of the occupant. So the court case has to continue. In other words, at that point, it's considered still an open case. Hadar Amalei, the occupant now comes up with a new taina. And the avusachi. Yeah, your father owned, your grandfather and your great grandfather owned it. V'zavnita mahanhahu. But I did buy it from your father, or my father bought it from your father. So he changed his argument and added a new argument that I did buy it. This was after the beginning where all he did was bring Adam that he's the occupant. Okay? And then when I said that I've always owned it, that my father owned it, my grandfather owned it, which was not a true statement literally, he says, what I meant was the samachli Allah b'avosai. It was, I am so certain that this is in my clear, I have clear title. I'm so certain that I exaggerated and said it's been in the family for 100 years. But I did not literally mean that. I meant to say that my father or I bought it from your father. Okay. What has that got to do with it? There's nobody who ever gets on a witness stand who doesn't lie. And nobody tells the whole truth because a lot of it is inadmissible. In any event, we just introduced a notion. Can I go to court with a claim? I'm absolutely sure that Keller owes me money. So I go to Besdin and I say, Keller owes me money. But I don't bother to say, not only that, but I had 45 witnesses and I have a star. So the court rejected me. Can I now revise my argument with a new, perhaps stronger claim? That's the question on the table. Can I make a claim and then, if it's unaccepted, revise and make a new claim? Okay, that's the question. Oh, ain't toin v'choser. Or maybe once I made my original claim, that's it. We don't know. Ula omer toin v'choser. Ula says you can modify or revise your argument in court. Okay? The Nahardoi Amrei, but the rabbis in Nahardoi say, Ainatoin v'choser. You get one bite at the apple, and that's it. You can't revise your claim. Okay, so now we have two very strong positions that very sharply alters how a court would handle a case. But it gets a little fuzzy. Moide Ula acknowledges Hechida Amarle when the original claimant said, Shalavoisai velo shalavoseicha. It was in my family's hands and not your family's hands. The Einatoin v'choser. That's already, I inherited it. So I may not have a deed, because you don't, your great grandfather had the deed. It's long gone. But I inherited it just from my father. Once you may make that claim, ain't a toin because of a toin. You can't come back and say, well, I really bought it. Because there is no stronger claim than my family's had it for decades. Okay? Vehechi dahave koi beidina velotoi. And when Ula also acknowledges that if you're in the courtroom and you did not immediately come up with the new claim, the awesome and you left the courtroom. You know, they adjourned the case and you come back tomorrow with a whole new claim. No good. That you can't do. Why? My timer. Ante agmere. Because he cooked up a new claim with the assistance of his friends and his lawyers. So obviously, that's a whole new notion. He hadn't even have it in mind in the courtroom. Okay, so those are limitations on you can add material to your argument. But the Nahardoi who said you cannot, Meidu Nahardoi, they would acknowledge, hey, the Amale, when he makes a claim, shall avoisai shall that he adds to, I've been here for 5 years. I have a chazaka. And the other guy says, yeah, but I can prove I never, you never bought it. He says, oh, no. I never bought it from you, but my father bought it from your father. You don't know what your father did 50 years ago. That he can add because it's not a modification, it's an amplification. So he can do that. And they also say that where there's like a settlement conference and both sides are discussing and putting forward arguments to try and reach a settlement before they go to court, and one of them does not raise a bomb kasha, a very strong proof. He holds it back. And then when he shows up in court and he brings this new argument that he never mentioned in the conference, that you can do. So it's like you don't show all your cards in the negotiation process. You wait to get the court to blow the other guy out of the water. Okay, my timer, what's the rationale? Avidinish the lo megale to anose elilabedina. That it's reasonable and normal to withhold your best argument till you're in front of the judge. Okay? Omar Ameimar, now this is another little bit of a modification. Omar Ameina, Anan Nehardoyana. I happen to live in Nahardoy, and I'm on the, one of the heavy hitters in Nahardoy. Vesevirali detoen v'choser v'toen. But I disagree with my colleagues, and I hold that you can add a new argument in court if it's a continuing thing and you didn't go out and cook up a new argument. The hilchasa, what is the bottom line? What's the halacha? Toen v'choser v'toen. You can go into court, present an argument, hold something back, and after the Hakira and Drisha, you could throw in the new fact, as long as it's a continuing process. There were no intermissions, etc. Okay, that's the end of that case. So in this case,
I thought it ended and then somebody's coming back in.
That is indeed what happened. So, and Abaya and Rabbah discussed the appropriateness of that. And Rabbah said, you're right, you can't come back tomorrow with new information. And he changed his ruling. But then we go into an intellectual discussion behind whether you can make a change in your argument. And there was a back and forth that the Nahadai say no, that Ravula says yes. And then we paskin that yes, you can change, and presumably in accord with Abaya's argument that it has to be in the court on the same case at the same time. That you can't ask for an adjournment and then come up with a new argument. Correct. That's what happened in the case. No, that's what happened in the case. Then we ruled that A should have brought, the halacha is, A should have brought his additional argument during the trial itself. He can't come back and put new information on appeal. And in the U.S. courts, it's the same thing. The trial record is the only thing you can bring up at appeal, with the single exception of a claim called actual innocence. But in any event, I would add that the new claim cannot contradict the old claim. In American courts, they throw in everything and even though the argument internally has no logic. But in a Jewish court, you cannot say, I bought it from Marty. And then Marty comes in and says, I never owned it. How could he have bought it from me? All right, I bought it from Erwin. You can't do that. All right, next case, a new interesting case. Ze Omer Shalavosai. One guy says, I inherited this property from my forefathers. It's been in the family for decades. And nobody challenged me. I've been here. I have a chazaka. I've been here 4 or 5 years. Right? V'zeh Omar, now the claimant comes in. Shalavosai, what are you talking about? I inherited from my forefathers. I'm assuming they're not brothers. Okay? So I inherited from my forefathers, and I also have a chazaka. So I say, sahade davosai. So the first guy brings in 2 witnesses who say, yeah, his grandfather lived there, his father lived there. That's what they testify to. And he also inherited it from his father 3 or more years ago. Okay, so he has both inheritance as a claim and chazaka as a claim. And the second guy who had said, I've been there and I inherited it, he can't get witnesses to that his family owned it, but he does have witnesses that he occupied it. So both guys claim occupancy, and both guys say, I have witnesses to prove it. Okay? But he does not have witnesses to inheritance. Okay, so Reb Nachman heard this case, and he ruled. Omer Reb Nachman uked achila bahade achila. So the witnesses that you were there cancel out the witnesses that say that he was there, okay? And all we have left in terms of this testimony is uke ara becheska savosa. But the one set of witnesses had a more expanded testimony. We know Schwartz was there for 3 years. We also know Schwartz inherited familial property. Where the other guy, Abramowitz, just says, his witness, he's been there for 3 years. So at this point, Reb Nachman cancels out the contradictory parts of the testimony, and all that's left is that he inherited it. And he awards it to the current occupant who claims he inherited it beyond the canceled out testimony. So immediately Rava jumps on Reb Nachman. Amalei Rava ha edus mecheshes. You have witnesses contradicting other witnesses. They both can't possibly be right, and you correctly threw them both out. However, once you canceled out the occupancy testimony, turn the page. So that testimony was not contradicted that he inherited it. But so that's why Reb Nachman rewarded the property to this guy. But you can't do that. Because if he's an aid checker, then everything he says has to be thrown out. So Lema Rava de Reb Nachman, when Reb Nachman and Rava argued, Reb Nachman accepted partial testimony from two witnesses. And Rava says you're not allowed to do that. If you can knock them out on one, it's knocked out the whole thing. Okay. Is that the Pelukta de Rav Huna v'Rav Chisda kamiflige? Is that a reiteration of an older argument between Rav Huna and Rav Chisda? The Itmar, because when those two Moirim, Shtei Bate Edim Hamach Chishus Zulazu, if two witnesses contradict each other in part of their testimony, Amar Rav Huna Zu Ba'a Bifnei Atzma Umeida, the one of those two katan can further testify to a new point that the other side doesn't have witnesses to challenge. So we only throw out the conflicting part of his testimony and we accept the rest. That's what Rav Nachman did, and therefore he agrees with Rav Huna. O Rav Chisda Aimer, Bahade Sahade, Shakre Lamali. How can you listen to lying witnesses? Once their testimony on part of is challenged, you have to throw the whole thing out. So he agrees with, Rava agrees with him. So Lema Rav Nachman da Omer ke Rav Huna, do we say that Rav Nachman lines up with Rav Huna? The Rava ke Rav Chisda, and Rava lines up with Rav Chisda. So the Gemara says, Aliva de Rav Chisda kuleyama lo plige. If we were to establish as the legal principle that a partial challenge is the equivalent of throwing out the whole testimony, that's really what everybody says. Okay? And kipligi. So what would Rabba and Rav Chisda, if you say that it's an established principle that if they lie on one thing, they're thrown out completely, so how could Rav Nachman have accepted partial testimony? So I'll leave it to Rav Huna. So they might have sided with Rav Huna, Rav Nachman to Rav Huna. Rav Nachman simply agreed with Rav Huna and allowed the unattacked portion of the testimony to hold. But Rava ad kan lo ka'amar Rav Huna ela le'edus acheres. When Rav Huna says you can accept their testimony in another matter, he wasn't talking about in the same trial. He was talking about if two guys say something and two other guys contradict them in this trial, they have not conclusively been shown to be liars. We don't know which side is lying. So they could testify next week in a totally different case. They have not definitively been declared a sheker. So when he says that they can be believed in something else, he doesn't mean internally in this case. He means in a totally separate case. But regarding this case, at this time, Rav Huna would not have allowed them to testify. So now Rav Nachman has no one to stand on. Okay? But Rav Nachman had ruled. And now comes the most exciting part. How dare I say Sahade Da'avusehi? The one who lost appealed to the court to reopen the case because he has new information. I can prove with these witnesses that this is my ancestral land. Okay? So Reb Nachman reopens the case and does something extraordinary. Omer Reb Nachman anan achtine. I gave the property to one guy incorrectly because I took part of their testimony and accepted it. Anan maskinan le. I'm taking the land away from him and I'm putting it in escrow. I'm going to have to rehear the whole case. Okay? Olezilusa de beidina lo chashinan. And I'm not concerned about the fact that people are going to talk about I did something wrong in court. I'm ignoring the embarrassment of the court when I try to pursue justice to take the land away from the person I may have wrongly given it to, and I'm going to rehear the whole case. So that is now going to be the topic of the next discussion, because typically a court in Jewish system, there's no appeal system. The court's ruling is always final. Okay? Mesiv Rav of Isema Reb Zera, somebody challenged Reb Nachman. Shnaim Oisrim Meis, 2 witnesses come and testify that Mrs. Schwartz's husband died. Okay? V'shnayim Omrim Lo Meis. But 2 other witnesses come and say, what are you talking about? We had coffee with him this morning. Shnayim Omrim, or another possibility. Shnayim Omrim Nisgorsha. 2 witnesses come and say, we witnessed the divorce of Mr. and Mrs. Schwartz. Vishnayim Omrim Lo Nisgorsha. And 2 witnesses, what are you talking about? They just got off the boat. They were on a cruise for 2 weeks. They're not divorced. Harezu Lo Tinose. Mrs. Schwartz cannot remarry. That's the halacha. The Imni says, but if she did remarry, lo teitze, the court does not force a divorce. So, but, and this is a Mishnah. Reb Menachem the Rabbi Yossi, Amor, he holds, Amor Reb Menachem the Rabbi Yossi, Amalte Eina Omer Teitze. When do I say they do get a divorce and she has to leave the new husband? Bisman shabo edim v'achar kach nises. That's where first there was a court case. She wanted the court to declare her a free woman. They did not. She ignored the court and she married the new guy. Aval nises v'achar kach bo edim. But what if she not believed her husband to be dead and she remarried, and then witnesses come and challenge whether her first husband was alive or not? In that case, we do not make her get a divorce from the second guy. So she acted before the court ruling. You don't have to divorce the new husband. After the court ruling, you do have to divorce the new husband. So Reb Nachman here, Menachem here is arguing the court can't revise itself because that would be a bizayon to the court. So Reb Nachman, and this is all presented to Reb Nachman because he did reopen the case. So this whole little argument, Reb Nachman, you can't do that. Even in a case where kids could be mamzerim, we don't reopen the case. And all you're talking about is the Schwartz farm. So Reb Nachman answers, Amalei, Ana Savre Lema Aved Uvda. I acted to reverse my decision because I was wrong. Hashta da osivnatain at. But you're bringing this brisa. That brisa isn't really relevant over here. Eisvein Rav Hamnuna Besuria. Rav Hamnuna Besuria also yesterday came to me and threw this same brisa at me. V'lo avdinin be avda. And I decided I'm not going to listen to the brisa, but I'm not going to revise my ruling, because many people brought this principle to me that even when you're wrong, you stay with your ruling. So he gave the land back to the person who he gave it to in the first case, which was the current occupant.
In other words, he reversed himself twice.
Well, he undid his reversal because they pointed out to him that even when the consequences are dire, courts can't reverse themselves. Even though logically he was right, the principle of the authority of the court is more important than any one case. That's what we're saying here. Now, nevertheless, even though Reb Nachman told Rava he was backing off and he was sticking to the original ruling, that's not what he did. Nafik aved uvda. He went and took away the farm from the current occupant. So in other words, he was appeasing Rava, but he didn't intend to accept the brisa. Stavar to usahi biyadeh. He thought that he made a mistake and that it was his obligation to change the ruling. Velohi, but that's not true. Ella mishum detalia ashle ravavre. That what he did, he could do what he wanted because he was the Gadol Hador. And his rulings were hanging on heavy, thick ropes. In other words, everything he did was based on precedent from Tanaim. He never made a decision independently. To Tanan, we have a Mishnah. Rav Yehuda Omer ein ma'alin lekahuna al pi echad. If a new guy moves to town and claims he's a Kohen, and says, and I can prove it, Abramowitz, we lived in my community when we were kids, and he knew my father was a Kohen, so I'm a Kohen too. We do not let that guy eat Truma, or in modern times, we would not, according to Reb Yehuda, let that guy collect the 5 Sloyim. He could still get the first Aliyah, because that's unimportant. Okay, so now Reb Elazar is going to explain what Reb Yehuda really meant. Amar Rav Elazar, Amasai, when do we say that one witness isn't good enough to make this guy a Kohen, or one witness isn't good enough in other cases too? B'makom sheish orarin, in a place where somebody raised a question about this guy being a Kohen. When we both lived in Brooklyn and you weren't a Kohen, now all of a sudden in Boca you want to be a Kohen? Avo, b'makom she'ein oirin, in a case where nobody knows who you are, where there is no challenge to your status as a Kohen, ma'alin lekahuna al pi echad. All you have to do is show that somebody accepted you as a Kohen somewhere else, and you would become a Kohen. So that's that. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Mishum Debe Shimon ben Hasagan. He quoted the Reb Shimon, the son of the Sgan Kohen, the number 2 Kohen. Mylin lekahuna al pied echad. Unlike Reb Yehuda, he makes a blanket statement. 1 witness is enough to the kahuna. So Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Hainu Rabbi Elazar, is this the same as Rabbi Elazar? Ma tema arur chad ika benayu. So the difference would be, and this is, if I challenge something, I need 2 witnesses. In other words, I have to be able to prove my position. They would hear the case, but they wouldn't listen to my unsupported testimony. They need 2 witnesses. So the machlokes now, where it's trying to say, the chitema orer chad ika benayu, that the argument here is between Reb Yehuda and Reb Eliezer, is if there's only 1 witness on the argument that he is not a Kohen, and only 1 witness on the argument that he is a Kohen, do they cancel each other out? And we'll tune in tomorrow. We'll be on the last line because it goes much into the next block. Okay. To my knowledge, Carpel said he'll do it tomorrow, but he didn't say definitively. So tune in to the announcements. In any event, you have to put up with me, I think, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then Baruch Hashem, Reb Shimon is back.
Baruch Hashem. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Thank you.
Same to you. How you feeling?
Thank God.
Your wife
Yeah.
and you had a different take on your boat illness.
Yeah. Okay. She's right.
She's right. Okay.
Even when she's not right, she's right.
Well, that's my wife. His wife has to really be right.
That went in the box and says to the husband, that only 2 words. Yes, dear.
All right, so you know the story about Shimon goes to the next town over, marries a girl. So after Shabbat Brachas, they're on their way back to his town. It's winter. They're riding in the wagon. The horse slips on ice. The man yells out, "That's 1." They drive along some more. The wheels get caught in a rut, and the horse staggers. He says, "That's 2." They continue riding. They hit a patch of black ice. The whole horse falls over. He says, "That's 3." Takes out a sword and cuts the horse's head off. So the girl says to him, "What'd you do that for?" He says, "That's 1."
Oh, the fantasies that we cook up.
I guess you heard to know the story about the guy that was living in this large community, and on Mondays and Thursdays, so it was only 1 Cohen and 1 Levy. So all he got, he was lucky if he got an Aliyah once a year,
Right.
and he was moving.
Upset with, he was leaving town.
Now he's moving, going to a new community. So he says, "Wait a minute, I'll tell these guys that I'm a Cohen
When you get to the new
when I
town.
get to the new town, you know.
Yeah.
I won't do a thing in the band or making the
Right.
soup
I'll
like
make a
you
few
do.
bucks.
And that's it. So finally, so he goes, he's in this new town, and sure enough, he sees the guy walking towards him. He said, "Okay, this is."
Du bist der Cohen, du bist der Levi.
So he goes up and says, "Mr. Cohen," says, "Yes." "Oh, can you step outside?
Right.
Please, for your oven today."
Something back in the,
What?
when my daughter lived in Curacao.
Your daughter lived in Curacao?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, my son was from Curacao. His father was born in Curacao. But so she went down there vacation from Stern College, another girl.
And that's where she met him.
Yeah. Came back visiting every other week or something. Yeah, it's been working. This was many years ago. 3 married kids, or 2 in 1 marriage couple. But some guy came into the shul in the time there and said, I had my saliva tested, something.
Oh,
like
yeah,
that."
it's the DNA and I have the gene.
Yeah, he says, I'm a Cohen.
Uh,
I said, no, that was it.
well, he's a that, but he's one with.
I said, no.
We had a case in Long Beach where a family, we're just Stama family, and then their youngest child's bar mitzvah, and the father of the bar mitzvah bacher, he has a great uncle who showed up for this bar mitzvah. He hadn't been in any of the family sefers. The other relatives are long dead. And they go over to him and they say, Reb Yid, we want to give you shlishi. And he says, I'm a Levi, which would make the boy a Levi too.
Yeah.
So one shul in town accepted this Eid Echad and said he's a Levi. And the other shul in town said, no, he's not. So they sent a delegation to Europe to look at graves. And there was a picture carved on the tombstone. And still the second rabbi says that's not significant. That's not enough. You have to have Eidim that you're a Levi. Now, I don't know why they made a tumult, because again, the actual halacha is anybody can have the first aliyah. You're that anxious for an aliyah, tell him you're a Kohen. And the Levi doesn't take money. So all he gets to do is wash someone's hands. So why they didn't accept it, but it's not so easy. Americans, we don't really, a lot of our relatives died overseas. We don't really know what we are. And the whole concept of you being a Kohen or a Levi is based on Edus. So like a Baal Tshuva, whose family were Kahanim. In other words, in Metzias, when he was a baby, a little boy, his grandfather Duchen. But his grandfather wasn't religious. His father wasn't religious. So when he was in yeshiva, he claimed to be a Kohen, and the Rosh Yeshiva said, no, you're not, because your father is hustled from Edus. Your father's not religious. He can't be an aid. So his statement that you're a Kohen is meaningless, and you're not a Kohen. That comes up.
His father was a Kohen?
His father presumably was a Kohen, but we don't know for sure. We don't know anybody's a Kohen for sure. But the only basis on which you can claim kahuna or levia is because your father told you. I mean, how else would you know? So if your father's puzzle from Edus, his statement doesn't count.
I have a friend, when his father died, he was very young. He was about 3 or 4 years old. And his mother was in the Sorrento, she would burn sweat on Friday night and then turn on the TV,
Yeah, that's what they call tradition, though.
Yeah. So, and she said,
you want to get your phone back.
So he was saying a Cohen. Cohen. When my I ran into him many years ago.
Later.
Several years ago, he was that one.